if you have ADHD, you have a 300% chance more to be an entrepreneur. You tell them, like, you need to focus on this task. Here's this flashlight. And they have a floodlight. And they're focusing on everything. They're like, oh, the electricity is buzzing. There's a person over there. Like, look, literally a squirrel is there. And unless they have that hyper focus, like, someone needs to hand them a flashlight. And if they're hyper focused on something that they actually give a shit about, they're like, whoa. And then everything else is quiet. So, but it's more, that is a huge part of the mindset shift of it's not on or off. Saara, I'm great during the week. But like on the weekend, I have a pizza and then I'm like, oh, F it. Well, might as well eat shitty all weekend and I'll start again on Monday. Yeah.
I mean,
I
need to go get a brain scan. Anybody watching this, like if this resonates with you, go get your brain tapped.
Yeah.
Dr. Saara Happinen, how's it going today?
Wonderful. So happy to be here.
I love your last name. Like the people like growing up, have you always been like, what's happening? And people giving you some like, has that been a nickname?
Yeah. So I thought that was just for me. When people are like, what's happening? And I discovered that's not just for me. That's how people greet each other. But it's one of the reasons I named my company Performance is Happening. And I didn't take my husband's last name, which is Baker, which to me is boring. I love the Baker, but my last name is way cooler. Yeah, and I was already published under my name. So I kept it.
Yeah, love it. So let's get right into it. You're a leader. You're also a former athlete, which we'll, touch on a little bit, I suppose. But you're a leader in the mind-body connection, ADHD, positive psychology, health and wellness on the individual level and the group/corporate level. So I guess the leading question is, what do you find challenges people the most?
Change.
Change. Okay.
You didn't even finish, but I'll say change. Like, us humans want to be comfy and cozy, and we wish for a whole bunch of things, but like wishing will not get you the life change that you want and desire. And the hardest part about people, I would say, is training a growth mindset. So I like to say, like, you can train your brain. And I do brain and body training, but you can train your brain exactly the same way you train a muscle. Like, I have guns. You can't really see, but I have guns under there. And I didn't get muscles from doing one rep, right? I can't just go into my gym and lift up a barbell and be like, did one, good, I have muscles now. So we train our brain exactly the same way. And the way that you increase your comfort zone or get uncomfortable is first you have to do it on purpose. You have to, there's a lot of inner demons we have to fight to be able to make change, because our brain doesn't want us to have success. But the good thing is our brains are neuroplastic, not plastic, like plastic. I usually like not like this, but that
neuroplasticity. Yeah,
train them and create new neurological connections to then make things less shitty, less hard, easier. But there's no magic wand, and it's not a magic pill. Like, everyone wants a magic pill and they want immediate success. And that's not how it works. Because wherever you are right now, it didn't happen overnight. Whether that's like you're in a relationship you don't want to be in, or you're in a career, or you have a body that you're not happy with, like none of that happened overnight. It's not going away overnight. So that's my big challenge with humans.
Yeah, me as well. I mean, I coach a lot of people, a lot in the athletic space, and people are always envious of where somebody is, right? Their success, but they're not envious in the work that it takes to get there. So they stay on the couch and our brain reverts back to what's easy, what's familiar, and everything else. So you've been doing this a long time, and you mentioned that you're published and you're high level, you're an influencer as well. When you take on a new client, what are the first steps that you take to discover their vices, their issues, their habits and routine? And what's the first step that you see most often that people, number one, struggle with? And number two, how do you provide because I imagine a lot of this has to be voluntary, right? It's that all-in concept. And you are a swimmer at a very high level. So you know all about
Diver,
that growth.
diver,
Diver, sorry,
diver.
sorry. I guess in
Okay,
that,
a
like,
water sport, but very different.
I guess are people like, is that a big thing? You're not a swimmer, you're a diver.
Yeah, well, I mean, I flip. I jump and flip. I have no endurance. My husband's a swimmer.
Okay.
It's funny. I mean, in America, it's very much the same. Like, we didn't have that in Canada where I grew up. It was like diving and swimming had nothing to do with one another. I didn't even know any swimmers. And then I went to college and we're on the same team. And I was like, what is this? Like, they're
Uh,
swimmers, we're divers. So, yeah, it's very different, but both
yeah,
in a
that's
pool.
yeah. Well, I was a minor league pro baseball player and I was a pitcher, not an athlete. So as we like scale up, like the pitchers aren't athletes, we just throw a ball, but the athletes are the infielders and the everyday,
No,
outfielders,
pitchers are
etc.
athletes for sure.
At a young age, hey, I'm an athlete. I know I'm an athlete, but anyway, so so what are the most common things that you see that anybody watching this can be like, oh yeah, that's me right there. Whether it's diet, nutrition, taking action, voluntary action, right? Because we can force somebody into change temporarily. But that's tactical and finite. That's like saying I want to lose 10 pounds and you go on this crash diet and then before you know it, you gain 20.
Okay. There's two things. I'm going to write them down so my ADHD brain remembers. And the first things, they're both W words, so that makes it easy. The first thing with change is why. So let's say you want to lose 10 pounds to get in a pair of pants. Like, okay, that's going to motivate you for like 2 days, and then things are going to get hard, and you're going to be like, whoops, whatever. So the first thing I usually have people do is I just call it the why exercise. So you're going to ask yourself why you want whatever the change is. We can stick with, for easy sake of easiness, like losing 10 pounds. Why? Why do you want to lose 10 pounds? To fit in a pair of pants? Okay, great. Why do you want to fit in those pair of pants? Ooh, maybe you're like trying to attract a significant other or increase your like confidence. Okay, why? Like, I say 5 to 7 times you have to ask yourself that deeper question of why you really want to lose the weight. Because when you go into the office and someone brings cookies and your monkey brain in that moment is like, ooh, look, cookies. And especially for ADHDers, like dopamine right now, that's going to be a fast way. Yeah, have the cookie if you really want the cookie, but also having that ability to stop in that moment, to pause and to be like, okay, what would my future self do? And what is the decision that I'm making versus having everything be on autopilot? If your real why might be something as deep as you want to lose those 10 pounds so you can be crawling on the floor with your grandkids, or you want to lose those 10 pounds so you actually like have the confidence to go out to the grocery store to talk to people, that is going to be way more concrete when you're just going to have one cookie instead of 20, instead of, oh, I need to fit in this pair of pants,
Right.
So
Yeah.
really digging into the challenging parts of ourselves. And often we don't ever reflect on what it is that we want, what's holding us in, like what's in the way, and like asking ourselves these deeper questions to then kind of take charge of your brain and decide. So I call it DIA. I live in Denver and the airport here is called DIA, Denver International Airport. So not that DIA, but I call it deciding in advance what you're going to do when the cookies show up. And often if we tell ourselves no cookies at all you're going to do is want a cookie. Because like, don't think of a blue elephant. Like I used to train a professional golfer and he was hitting in the sand all the time. And I'm like, what are you telling yourself? And he's like, don't hit it in the sand. And I'm like, okay, well, your brain hears hit it in the sand. I was like, what are we going to tell our brain? And he's like, hit it in the green. And the next time he comes back after tournament, he's like, your thing worked. Your brain trick worked. And I was like, it's just knowing how to train your brain and knowing we need to tell our brains that we're in charge and this is what we want. None of this like wishy-washy, because if you're wishy-washy, your brain goes back to your subconscious programming, which often 95% of your decisions are already made from the day before. And at one point, those have kept you safe. They haven't helped you succeed. Our brain does not want success for us. Our brain wants to keep us safe and alive. And the way that it does that, even if it's uncomfortable, is by repeating behaviors they've done in the past. So that was my number one, is like figuring out your why. My number two is this all or nothing thinking that a lot of people have, but especially neurodivergent brains, is it's on or it's off, right? You're on the wagon or you're off the wagon. And I'm like, hello, there's no wagon, there's life. So even when you do mess up on a decision, the next decision counts. So I find a lot of people before they start working with me, they're like, Saara, there's no wagon, there's just your life. And every day when you look back on your day, you want to have more good choices that are supporting your goals than non-good choices. And one choice might be like, yeah, you had a piece of pizza, don't eat the whole thing. And maybe the next meal you have is like a little more vegetable based, and maybe you still have pizza, but like, it doesn't have to be you're eating all the pizza or no pizza. You can still have pizza, but how can you, then the next step I'm always like, versus, especially when you're first getting started, where can you add in the good to your life versus taking it away? Because the second you tell your brain you can't have something, we're like, oh, we need that. You know? So I always have people, no wagon, figure out your why. There's no wagon. And where can you add in good before, then you have to reflect on how that feels before you even think about taking anything away. You know?
Okay. Yeah, a few things come to mind. I mean, I used to be a very black or white thinker, rather impulsive. I wouldn't say recklessly impulsive, but just spur of the moment, you know. And I used to say when I was playing baseball and producing all these movies, like, look, I'm either dry or I'm in the deep end. There's no shallow end for me. And I had to redefine failure and what that meant for me as well, right? And I know you speak a lot about that 1% better each day. So when you work with a client, right, and you come in and you say, find your why, there's no wagon, etc. You can't just be with them 24 hours a day. So how do you set them up to gain awareness, think before they act? And it sounds like you want them to pause and say, all right, should I have this piece of pizza? And if I do, that's okay to a certain extent, provided I don't eat the whole thing, and provided I do it in moderation, and provided I follow up those meals with a little more discipline. And I always say, like, discipline equals freedom. And people don't really understand that at first glance, and you have to get into it with them a little bit. But how do you hold your clients accountable, or rather, how do they hold themselves accountable? Is it journaling? Is it making sure you take care of their morning and evening routines? Like, what does some of that framework look like for you?
I'm going to get into that, but you said one thing that I want to tap on real quick is that discipline piece. I always like to say, choose your heart. So in that moment, the thing that you pre-plan that could be your discipline, that you're like, oh, this is going to be the hard thing. Like, you can choose that to stick with your discipline, but also know if you're going to give in to your subconscious programming and like what you would normally do, that's easy. You are also choosing that. And the hard that comes with that is not in this moment. It might be when you're digesting a really fatty and greasy cookie that you haven't eaten in a long time and your guts are telling you like you made a poor choice, or when you're on the scale next week, or if you need to go perform and things aren't going the way. Like, you're still in that discipline moment by pausing, you're still choosing. Both ways are hard. Like, but knowing that you are basically creating your own destiny and you're choosing versus the autopilot of there's a cookie, I'm eating it, you know?
Yeah.
So I think training your brain is very much a lot of it of catching yourself. Like, am I on autopilot, or like, what's happening? Am I deciding? Okay. And then you asked me a question. You need to ask me a question again. I don't remember.
Yeah, I guess it was like, okay, so you have your, let's say, consultation and you describe your framework to them, and now
accountability, it's coming back.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Slowly. Okay, perfect. So when I'm meeting with an individual client, we usually have a 30 to 45 minute meeting every week. And we have the 3 takeaways that are going to be our goals that week. and we decide them together. So I always say I do like 50% coaching, 50% consulting. So coaching is actually, you know the answer. We're just figuring out how to get this working the best in your life, right? And then 50% is the consultant of my educational background and performance and wellness and all that. And then I say I'm also 10% unicorn because I'm a weirdo. And if my math doesn't work out, like, you're not the person for me. But with that being said, they know there are 3 like basically non-negotiables. And we talk about that. And then because I work with a lot of ADHDers, it's like, if you're taking something away, what is the replacement behavior? Because our brains are going to fill that hole. So a lot of it is, if we're reducing something, like, what are we going to do instead? Then we also always talk about, like, when your monkey brain is in that moment, whatever the goal is, like, what are your options? What are you going to do? Are you going to try and like really use that discipline muscle? Are you going to what I call a friend? So one of the great things about coaching with me is during business hours, because I know humans are humans, like, I can give you all this stuff for a week, and then you're actually in real life and it's happening and you're like, it's not going the way I thought it was going to go. So they can text me or voice note me on WhatsApp, and within an hour, usually I respond if it's in between my clients or I see it, and then they have help in that moment. But I think a big part of it is reflecting on how it goes. So the day before we meet for a coaching session, they have a check-in form. And in that, there's a lot of reflection. At least the first 12 weeks they work with me, okay? Because we spend 12 weeks together and we're changing their lives and teaching them new habits. And I always say, oh, like, when you get your PhD in Finland, you get a top hat, and you get a sword. I don't know where my sword is. My sword's right there. But I always say we're trying it on like a hat. It's not a tattoo. So we're going to try a bunch of stuff. And if it works, we keep it for next week. And if it doesn't work, it's just a hat. It's not a tattoo. We don't have to keep it forever. And certain things work for a really long time. And then all of a sudden they don't work anymore and you have to try something new. So I always like to say, like, there's no guidelines to life. You can always change it. There's no rules. Like, you get to make this up as you go. But as ADHDers, and I work with a lot of ADHDers, we tend to have like this demand avoidance. And
what do you mean by that? What do you, sorry to interrupt. What do you mean by demand avoidance?
So there is like this deep need for autonomy. And autonomy is knowing that you are in total control and that you're making your own decisions and choices. And we always have choice. So for some of my academic research, I did motivation. There's 3 basic psychological needs, and I won't make this boring. It's competence, autonomy, and relatedness. And those have been proven across cultures, across countries. Like, all humans need this for optimal performance and well-being. Autonomy is one of those things. This tends to be a lot higher in ADHDers. But I will also always give someone autonomy in the gym, even if it's fake. And this is a trick. If you're a parent, you can do this with your kids. You'll have more success. Do you want option A? Do you want option B? So in the gym, I might say, are you lifting 25 pounds or do you want the 30? They feel like they have choice. Either way, I'm getting them to lift weights, so it doesn't matter. But you are more likely to be intrinsically motivated. You're more likely to follow through with whatever it is if you have autonomy. So if you have choice. So I'll train someone and they'll have amazing results. And then they'll be like, can you train my significant other? Like the husband or wife. And I'm like, whoa, do they want to be here? Do you want them to be here or do they want to be here? Because I've tried that and it doesn't work. Like, I need the person to want to be wanting to get healthy and make positive choice. You know what I mean? So if you don't have autonomy, as a regular human, that's huge. When you don't have autonomy as a ADHDer, there's almost like this physical disgust that we have, and we will shut down and be like, don't tell us what to do. Or a lot of ADHDers are actually motivated when someone tells them they can't do something. And you're just kind of like, hold my beer. That's like the
Oh
best
yeah,
way
that's me.
to
Oh man.
an
Oh
ADHD.
yeah. Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. But the thing is, we have to be a little careful because we can have this with ourselves as well. So we have to be careful the language we're doing. For me, I love gardening. And last season, I was telling myself, I have to get the drip system up. I have to get the drip system up. And summer came and the drip system was like in a wad in the middle. And I kept telling myself I had to do it. And it felt like such an internal demand for myself that I was just like, F it, I'm not doing it at all. And it didn't get done because of this, like these demands that felt placed on me. So when I coach ADHD or specifically, we have to be really careful of like, what's the language you're using? What are you choosing? What are you deciding? What are your guidelines that you're setting for yourself? Not this language of like, I have to, because then we resist a lot. So even switching that to be like, I get to work out. I feel amazing when I move my body. I am so blessed that I can like move without pain. I know we can say things like, okay, here's the thing. I feel the only workout you regret is the one you didn't do. So for a lot of people, it's like reflecting on your future self. How's that future self going to feel? And transition is very challenging. So getting that transition piece to be really easy. So how can you like slide into for some people, it's like putting your clothes out the day before. And then you wake up and you just put your workout clothes on and you can go. But transition from non action to action is very challenging for a lot of ADHDers. So we really try with accountability to reduce that demand avoidance. I never tell any of my people that have to do anything. I was like, what are you deciding? What are you planning for this week? What would a good week look like? Also that like self-reflection, your future self. If this week went optimally, how would that look? If this were to feel easy, how would that look? Because a lot of it goes back to how we're framing it in our brain. Because a lot of people I find have this misconception that having a healthy lifestyle is hard. And I'm like, why? Like, you have to do like, whoa, you don't have to do shit. Like, you don't have to do an hour workout. You can do a 10-minute workout and kick your own butt, and that's sufficient, and go for a walk. Like, there's no rules to life. And a big part of it is like figuring out how to make this optimal for the human I'm working with, and easy and fun and like challenging if they want it to be challenging. But every human is different. So there's no like one size fits all thing in my
Right.
world. I
Yeah,
don't do.
no. Yeah, I agree. And I'm not diagnosed with ADHD, but I certainly feel like I am, to that whole like, you can't do it, don't do it like this, or people who tell me what to do. There's immediate friction, and I don't think that I'm unique that way. And I think also children have a whole lot of willpower, and a lot of parents and teachers and coaches who just point their finger at these little kids and say like, do it this way. That bed is only made for, procreating and sleep. But to me as a little boy, I'm also a Superman. So it's like a trampoline. I'm jumping and flying all over the place. Don't tell me what to do. So do you do so our limiting beliefs, like perception versus perspective. So you're helping somebody gain perspective and future look into who they want to become in the next week, or even how far out do you go to help people gain perspective? Like if you could, one thing that helped me from Jordan Peterson is and I've never met this guy. I just follow him on social media and read all of his books. And he talks to males, mainly, but he said, go out 5 years and ask yourself and write down like a stream of consciousness type writing, anything that comes to mind. If you could become anybody you wanted to become in 5 years, who would you be? What would that look like for yourself? And then you start marching towards that. How do you do any type of that future authoring type work with your clients? And if so, what does that look like? And then if you could go into, as you explain that, go into a little bit more context as to what ADHD is.
Okay. So there's a lot there.
Sorry, I know
I
that's a
personally
loaded
believe,
question.
no, you're fine. The future self letter is a big one. But I believe that here's how I like to explain ADHD for people who don't really have a good understanding of what it is. I will also say that if you have ADHD, you have a 300% chance more to be an entrepreneur. So, hi, that's a lot of us.
Yeah.
Mainly a lot of that demand avoidance of like, don't tell me what to do. Also, we need to be in charge of our schedule because it's like a mountain range. Like it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. It's like when you're hyper focused, there nothing else exists. Like I was hyper focused on my sport. I was hyper focused on health, wellness, and fitness. When I was doing my PhD and I was kind of in it before I took a 7-year break, I was hyper focused in that. And what happened, how I actually got a diagnosis, I published research, good, like I was into it. After a break, I went to read my academic writing over and over again, and it wasn't going into my brain. I was like, oh my God, my brain is broken. I got my brain scanned, and they're like, no, you have ADHD. And so they scanned me twice. Once they put radioactive dye in, and they're like, when you're focused on a boring task, your frontal lobe doesn't get any blood flow. And I was like, that's what it feels like. Like my brain
Wow.
is shutting off. And they're like,
Wow.
yeah, because you don't care. So
Huh.
once I kind of understood, holy, I'm not broken. Holy, I just have ADHD. I went down that rabbit hole and I've been hyper focused on that. So it made sense. So a lot of athletes are ADHD. A lot of people in the military are ADHD, and we excel in that space because we're hyper focused on our sport. We have a schedule, whether you're like a pro or in college. Same kind of thing with like military. You're moving your body a lot. You have all these like rules and stuff. And then we think when we're done school, when we're done our sport, when we're done our military, we're going to have all this freedom and it's going to be great. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, like my brain is doing all these things all the time and I can't. Why was it so easy for me before? So I always like to say that whoever named this brain type got it totally wrong. So they call it attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. There's no ADD anymore. It fits under this category. It is not a disorder at all. So there are different types. I have combined. So inattentive is basically like the ADHD in your head where you're having all these thoughts about everything and you can't quite, like, prioritization is challenging. Quieting of the mind is challenging. You basically have the hyperactivity, but it's in your head. Regular hyperactivity is what you think of like a typical, I don't know, 6-year-old boy who can't sit still. And you're moving your body a lot. I have a ring on with a spinner. I have like fidget spinners all the time. So I have both. I have like, I can't sit still and my brain is like, go, 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 go. But the way that I like to explain it is like a normal neurotypical, when it wants to focus on something, can take a flashlight and be like, I'm focusing on this task, and they're motivated by rewards, consequences, and incentives. And ADHDer, you tell them, like, you need to focus on this task, here's this flashlight, and they have a floodlight. And they're focusing on everything. They're like, oh, the electricity is buzzing. There's a person over there. Like, look, literally a squirrel is there. And unless they have that hyper focus, like someone needs to hand them a flashlight. And if they're hyper focused on something that they actually give a shit about, they're like, whoa. And then everything else is quiet. But it's more like we have a spotlight and we don't have the ability, unless it's something we care about, we're interested in, that's novel, there's urgency, competition, a social component, like all those things motivate an ADHDer, which for a normal person, you can be like, there's a consequence, you have to do this behavior. And an ADHDer is like, I don't care about the consequence. Like,
whoa.
Am I interested? Is it fun? Is there competition? Are people looking at me? Like, can I perform? It's just very different. And knowing that like our brain actually works differently, the way that like so dopamine is the motivational, basically a neurotransmitter, and that works very differently in our brain. And we're always seeking dopamine and then it gets depleted really quickly. So we are motivated by that motivational neurotransmitter. So that's why it is more challenging to be like, you need to do this because of this. That doesn't really work. So that's why I really try and help people of like, how is this important to you and your life and the person you want to become? because
Wow.
I find that's just a lot easier than. And it was so ironic because I got a master's and PhD in motivation, knowing that my brain was different, not knowing I had ADHD. I was just trying to figure out why everything was so easy for everybody else. And I was like, oh, now I know my brain's just different.
Yeah. Well, you are, as you were, it's so wild. As you were describing all that, and again, I've never gone to a doc or had a CAT scan for my brain, but everything you just described is me. And I'm sure anybody watching this who has these same, my inner dialogue is wicked, not in a malevolent way, but just active all the time. It's so hard for me to go to sleep. And also is a symptom or I don't know if symptom's the right word, but I feel like I pick up on a whole lot of tiny, like if I'm in a room with say 8 people and we're having a conversation, not only I can see all their little mannerisms, and I can also hear what's going on behind me. I'm hyper aware of every single thing around me. But yet when I really zero in on something, whether something like you said that I really am passionate about, that I really like, it grips me, it's palpable, I am all in on that, and all that white noise goes away. And I'm zeroed in on whatever task or goal or whatever it is that I want to do. I'm either all in on that or I'm not interested whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. I
I need to
can't
go get a brain
diagnose
scan.
it.
Anybody watching this, like if this resonates with you, go get your brain tapped.
Yeah. I mean, I can't legally diagnose you, but I would bet money that you have ADHD. Well,
Yeah.
and what you mentioned too, that intuition without knowing. So it's you're really good at self-reflecting, that you're like, I go into a room. A lot of people don't know what it is. And they're like, I go into a room and you can read people's moods.
Oh yeah.
And you don't know why. But it's
I can
because
feel
you're
it.
focused, you see everything without seeing everything. And probably, I don't know, I might call you out on this too, but like a lot of us tend to be, I know more females, but also males too, tend to be like people pleasers. And we really don't like to be yelled at, and we don't like confrontation. So a lot of
Yeah. Oh
times,
man.
because of our
Spot on.
ADHD brain, because we were dopamine seeking, we were like very impulsive, and we only driven by things that are fun. It's really sad. By the age of, I think it's 10 or 12, the average ADHDer has received 20,000 more negative feedbacks than a typical child. So you've
Huh.
been yelled at to be like, don't jump on the bed. That's not
Oh
what a
yeah.
bed is for. Like, don't, and we don't, and because we feel, so another things with our dysregulation, our highs are high and our lows are low. And a lot of like, if we're not excited, you just kind of feel like no, not really emotion. Like our emotions are high and low, but like in between, you're like, I got this. That's why we're always seeking, like as athletes, you want to compete, you want to do awesome. And then when you don't do awesome, you feel really low. So we have this because of like the people pleasing. We know that our brains also are 4 times faster than everybody else. So we're forward thinking ahead and we have all the things going on. And we know how to measure it, not measure it, but like intake it. So when you're in a situation, our intuition is so good because you're reading all those people. And one of the reasons you're reading all those people without consciously knowing or not is we don't want to be yelled at. That's like really hurts our self, because as a kid, we were always, so then you learn to like put on this mask, people please, but we're reading because we're like, is there going to be trauma? Are these people safe? Like what's going on? Or who's the person that I need to, like, I'm great with people, and I'm now realizing a lot of it is ADHD, but I was like, ooh, that person needs like their energy lifted a little. So you can like call that out, but also if that's like not a safe situation, you can be like, oh, that person, like, intuitively, sometimes immediately, who you can trust and who you can't trust. And I think that's one of our superpowers of our brain. And yes, it's natural, but also we've adapted because we were probably yelled at a lot as a child before the age of 7. So your subconscious is always like working overdrive to analyze everybody, to be like, who's safe? How are we
Yeah.
going to yell at that?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's that eggshell type of mentality in a way. It's like I'm tiptoeing around because I'm hyper aware of, and I relate to the getting yelled at thing for sure as a child. I'm in recovery, and I did deep years of, and I still do it every day, deep dives into human behavior selfishly for me. And then what I learn, I help others similar to yourself. But the ADHD thing for me, everything that you say, okay, so here's a question. So medicine 2.0, like Peter Attia says in his book Outlive, is our current system, and it's reactive, right? So we give you a pill, you're this hyperactive boy, or you're an adult coming to grips with your brain because you're working with somebody like yourself who's more holistic in nature. But what's the solve, right? So I'm your client, I have a ADHD, it's diagnosed, but yet I don't want to get on a pill. How does somebody help to address this? I mean, I've also heard this, that people with ADHD, and that's like a superpower. I know you speak to this too in some of your work.
Yep. I can lifestyle modification. So I take meds. I've actually been diagnosed twice. Once via brain scan, and then once from a psychiatric nurse practitioner, so I could take meds. I wanted to see what meds are like. I'll share my experience quickly with meds. It's not a super pill. Like for some people, I can take it if I need to sit in front of the computer and do 4 hours of work. I will say it is annoying when I take it. I will never take it if I have to do a podcast or get on a stage, because what it does is it makes you have one thought at a time. So I also have traumatic brain injury. I've had like 12 concussions. So I'm a weirdo, and I don't know if it's a combination of TBI and ADHD. But I lose words a lot, and I don't know if that's because of my traumatic brain injuries or because my brain moves so fast, I'm thinking ahead. So when I'm on meds and when I'm on stage and I can't think of a word, like let's just say blue, I would never forget the word blue. But normally my brain would be like, oh, here's 30 other words for blue, like explain it in a different way. But if I'm on stage, I'm also like a little nervous because I'm presenting or whatever. And my brain will be like, what's that word for blue? What's that word for blue? And I'm like, I'm on stage. I need to present. I have other things. And my brain's like, just one train of thought at a time. And I'm like, is this how regular people think? Because I don't like it at all. But if I need to sit in front of a computer and watch a 4-hour lesson, then like meds are great. But there's also no meds that don't have side effects. So for me, it was, I was grinding my teeth a lot, and I have TMJ. So that's not a good thing. Also, it's challenging. I'm awake in the evenings when I take meds, which normally I fall as soon as the sun goes down, like I'm sleeping. It doesn't matter if it's 6 p.m. or whatever. And meds would keep me awake longer. So I don't use meds every day, maybe like a few days a week. The one that's working for me the best right now, and I've tried 5, I've tried some stimulants and non-stimulants, is there's a patch. The thing I like about the patch is as soon as I take it off, within an hour or 2, I don't have the symptoms anymore. So it's faster even than the fast release or the extended release for the meds. But I will say that lifestyle modification is going to do, and scientifically proven, like exercise is going to be as effective as meds for depression, anxiety, and actually managing your ADHD. So you need to move your body for 20 minutes before you're going to get the dopamine that your brain needs for you to be functional. So work out, move your body for 20 minutes. A walk counts. You can put a weighted vest on if you want to like take that up for a notch. So I always ask my people, have you moved your body? What are the foods that you're eating? So there are certain foods that are higher in dopamine than others. Most of those foods are going to be whole foods. Reducing sugar. Sugar is a super quick way to get dopamine, but with every high, there's a crash. And then you're also doing things like being really mean to your immune system, creating more inflammation in your body. Yes, we do crave sugar. It's like cocaine for our brain, but really trying to reduce the sugar, get a lot of protein and fiber, move your body, try and sleep, manage your mindset. Like I want you to talk to yourself like your own best friend, because we often are saying things to ourselves that we would never utter to anybody else. So the words that you say to yourself matter. Being able to catch your brain, pause, and then reflect on better decisions. But there's also 2 supplements, and legally I can't recommend anything, but I'll tell you what I take and why I take them. Saffron is really good for if you have a low mood. It's actually been scientifically proven to be as effective as some of the antidepressant medicines. And saffron's a food, so actually I can recommend food.
Yeah, I was going to say the saffron, the food. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a spice. And then L-glutamine is an amino acid, which we all need amino acids to build muscles and whatnot. But this is the one that's a precursor to your body making dopamine. So L-glutamine is a good supplement to take as well. And then I also really like lion's mane mushroom. So I take it in powder form and I put that in my coffee, and that can help you focus if you don't want to try meds. And also a fresh lion's mane mushroom sauteed is beautiful, but not a brown one. Brown ones get gooey. I made that mistake. It has to be fresh, white, and not brown, because then it's disgusting. But the white fluffy ones are good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wow. Well, I'm definitely an ADHDer. I wonder. So, okay. Well, here, I know you've got to go because you have to work with some clients. If you were having a consultation, let's just take it in real time here. Me, what would you recommend? So how do I get diagnosed with ADHD? If somebody's brain is spinning and they're defiant in a way, like they love their autonomy, they're entrepreneurial in nature, and they need to move more, alter their diet, talk to themselves like somebody that they love, their best friend, for example, et cetera. Like, just like you just explained, how does somebody go about finding out if they are ADHD?
So it depends where you're at. If you want to do a brain scan, you can do a Saara scan. Dr. Amen also has clinics all over the United States he does brain scans as well. A psychiatric nurse practitioner can also diagnose you. Those are the ways that I was diagnosed. I have heard, because I'm in a lot of ADHD groups, that if you ask your primary care physician for a referral, it can be challenging. So depending what state you're in, if you think you have it, I guess, talk to your doctor. But if you're really almost sure, maybe skip that point, because I know it takes a long time to get a referral. And I know if you're interested, you kind of, do you have ADHD? Like, we don't have any patience. We want to know now, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you want to try meds.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of like quizzes online, which for me, if you think you have it, you probably do. And if you're going to modify your lifestyle, even if you don't have it, like, you only get better. Like, this is going to be a funner way. It's just going to be a funner way to live your life, even if you don't have it. But if you do want to try drugs, I would say probably the fastest way would be to find a psychiatric nurse practitioner who specializes in an ADHD diagnosis.
Okay. Good to know. I'm going to have to start. I'm going to take some action on that.
I will say I have a master class called Calming the Chaos and Mastering Your, I keep changing the name, but it's something like this: Calming the Chaos and Mastering Your ADHD. That's usually, I have people watch that because it's very much like this conversation that they're like, I have that. Oh, I think it's this. Ooh. But it's from the perspective of these things are your superpowers. Yeah. So you can just kind of manage your life a little bit better if you know, like, oh, I don't have to do it the way that society says I have to do it, which is really draining for us. I often say, like, we're Android systems and we've been trying to do our whole life using an Apple manual. And I'm just going to give you the Android manual, and all of a sudden everything is going to seem way better, way funner, way easier. And like, you feel like you start to belong on this planet, not like you're an outsider. So yeah. I'll give you the link to that masterclass. But that's usually a good place to start because it helps people positively reflect versus a lot of the crap that's on the internet is like, wow, my brain's broken. I was like, oh, your brain is not broken. Your brain is phenomenal. You just need to know how to use it. You've got a Ferrari brain and you're driving it like a Honda. So you need your Ferrari car keys.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Yeah, and I'll drop all your information down in the, in the show notes so people know where to find you. So, Saara, thank you for coming on. I know I'm ADHD now. It's unofficially official. So, thank you for coming on, and sharing your wisdom and providing your insight. And I hope all those watching, gained a little bit of awareness and also I think prompted enough curiosity and some thought to take action and explore. If they are ADHD, it's a superpower, like you said. So thank you very much for coming on the Intrinsic Podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, and welcome to the ADHD club.
Yeah. I'm going to have to journal about this a little bit and then text you, and we'll set up a call to talk more specifically about me. So
yeah, for sure.
All right, cool. All right. Thanks again. All right. We'll talk soon.
Adios.
All right. Adios.